We are recording. All right, welcome everyone.
All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our PE Roundtable. I'm going to be one of your hosts. My name is Christine Drago. If you're just joining right now, in the chat box, we've shared a link that is going to take you to a Google form. That's what we're using to connect our panelists with questions tonight. So if you could take a minute, click that link, submit a question for our panel. I'm going to be your moderator tonight, so I will be asking the questions. We're trying to avoid putting them in the chat box. So if you could use that Google form. So first off, I just want to welcome everybody and thank you guys for being here. We have a pretty good turnout and we're looking forward to a productive evening of having positive conversations about what PE can look like in this coming school year. So just to give you a quick introduction, again, my name's Christine. I'm a physical education teacher at PS 20 Anna Silver. It's a public school located on the Lower East Side in Manhattan. I've been teaching PE for over 10 years. Through that 10 years, I've overseen numerous student teachers as well as led professional development and professional learning communities for both the New York City Office of School Wellness and my school district, which is District 1 in Manhattan. As an educator who has spent my career attempting to make PE an essential part of students' lives, it's amazing to see the enthusiasm from everyone who has joined us tonight and to discuss positive ways to begin this coming school year. I want us all to recognize that we are still in a pandemic globally and that there has been a social movement for equity in our community to address the inequity in systems for people of color. So let's keep that in mind when we're planning and implementing our instruction for this coming school year. I'm going to take a second and have Jim introduce himself quickly.
Okay, thank you, Christine. I'm Jim Campbell. I'm an elementary physical education teacher from the Bronx, New York, District number 9. I have been teaching physical education 8 years. I'm also certified in childhood and special education. So I have 2 years of special ed, so technically 11 years for me. And I am also, I do some work with Shape America. I am the Shape Physical Activity Council Chair. And I am just floored that we have such a great turnout tonight and that we're here to talk about. And even though we don't have all the answers, this is still a great place to kind of come together and collaborate. And I want to just share the story that as whether you're watching this live or whether you're doing this with us right now, that we had about 580 people sign up, all wanting to talk about physical education, what it's supposed to look like, what it's going to be, and to come up with solutions and have productive conversations. And I want to share the story of Christine, that basically this whole thing started as Christine was looking for people to collaborate and just kind of plan with. And Christine and I had worked together before in the spring, and one of the silver linings is that this professional working relationship came from that. And look, now we have all these people come joining us. So we're really excited to have you tonight and have some very productive conversations.
So before we get started, we just want to go over some norms that we're going to use for our panel. Jim, if you can just share that slide so that everybody can see it. Again, we're going to be using the link in the chat box to put your questions for the panel. So if you can avoid putting them into the chat, that would be great, and just use that Google form. I'm going to be the moderator, and I'm going to ask the questions out loud during the presentation. So if you can please keep your mics on mute, that would be great. We're going to use asset-based language in the chat when we are using the chat. We are aware of the numerous challenges and unknowns that are presented. The intent of this webinar is to problem solve together, come to the table with an understanding that everyone has the best of intentions. Teachers, families, administrators, and community members are all here today to try and collaborate and problem solve as a mutual need to improve our students' and families' wellness needs are at hand. The PowerPoint, this recording, as well as any resources that are shared out today, we will share with you afterwards, so don't stress about that. And while many of us are not sure of the plans for this upcoming school year, it's perfectly okay, but let's not make this a venting session. So let's try to remain positive throughout. Okay, so we have quite the packed panel today. Thanks again to our panelists for joining us. I'm gonna allow them to introduce themselves. So first up on our panel, we have Dr. Victor Ramsey.
Am I on?
Yep, you're on.
Excellent, excellent. Greetings, everyone. My name is Victor Ramsey, proud member of New York City Department of Education Office of School Wellness Program. I work with an amazing group of people who are doing amazing work in New York City and beyond. I am currently approaching my 31st year. I started as a phys ed teacher, dean, assistant principal, regional director of fitness, and now education administrator and implementation team. In addition to that, I'm an adjunct assistant professor at the City University of New York, York College, where I've been there for about 19 years. I am a proud member of Shape America, proud member of New York State Association for Health, Physical Education, Recreation, and Dance, where I serve as a section president of the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusiveness section. I am very proud and very honored to be here and humbled to be here this evening with you, and I hope to share and learn from you as well. And I look forward to all of your questions and look forward to sharing this wonderful moment with you. And thank you to the facilitators of this event. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ramsey. Next up, we have Paul Forbes.
So, greetings, everyone. My name is Paul Forbes. Like my brother, Victor Ramsey, I work in New York City Department of Education. He said it's his 31st year. I think he wanted to say his 31st year in the DOE because he does look about 31 or so, but I think it's about the 31st year in the system. This is I'm going into my 25th year. So my big brother still has me, where I'm learning with and from him. And I want to say again, thank you to Jim and Christine for inviting me to be part of this, and to my colleagues on the panel, many of whom I'm just meeting now, but again, in spirit, we've connected in some form of fashion. And to everyone out here, almost 200 people in this space, again, greetings. I am the executive director within the Office of Equity and Access. I'm in a division that Victor also is in, where we look at not the child as the whole child and looking at not just the academics, but looking at the physical, emotional, spiritual wellness aspect. And now more than ever, we know how important this conversation is while people are talking about teachers and educators as frontline workers and how valuable we have been. I'm especially grateful that we're having these conversations about health, mental, physical, emotional, and saying that this is part of our education process and the work that we do. And so, again, I'm proud and honored to be in this space and looking forward to a great conversation. So, greetings.
Thank you. All right, next up we have Stephanie Dixon.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Dixon. I'm from Kansas City, Kansas Public Schools, and I serve 37 schools and K through 12. I'm the lead physical education teacher for our district. We have about 23,000 kids in our school district, and just trying to circumvent, figure out this crazy world that we're living in right now. And this is my 23rd year in physical education. I have a 10-year-old who goes to our district, and I just really want to support her and the 23,000 other kids that I support. And super excited to be part of the New York family, and just excited to represent Open too, because I'm an Open national trainer. So happy to see everybody and looking forward to making some great connections.
Thanks, Stephanie. Next up, we have Jason Steele.
Hi, I'm Jason Steele. I'm from Minot, North Dakota. I'm the current ND Shape president, the 2018 North Dakota Elementary Teacher of the Year. I'm also an open national trainer, host and creator of Let's Talk Phys Ed, which is a show on YouTube and Twitter, which scrolling through all of the names and faces on here, there's a handful who are joining us tonight who have been on that show, and hopefully a handful of you who have also watched. In this will be my 14th year teaching all elementary PE. And in looking at the names on this panel and when it was put together, I was also very humbled because I feel like I was at the lower end of the totem pole on that one for experience and knowledge. But if you play your cards right, I might throw out some oh yeahs and you betchas from North Dakota.
All right. Up next, Mike Morris.
I'm Mike Morris. I'm from Rocky Mount, North Carolina. I currently serve 2 schools. This is my 7th year teaching. I'm an open national trainer and also a member of NC Shape. And I'm glad to be here and looking to learn from you all.
And rounding out our panel is Dan DeJagger.
Hi, my name is Dan DeJager. It's awesome to see so many physical education teachers. I don't have a physical education department, so it's great to be with my peeps. Coming in from near Sacramento, California. I have been teaching for the last few years at a high school there that's an independent study high school, so it is really kind of blended learning. I'm still getting the hang of it, but looks like a lot of us are in that situation there, so hopefully I can help with some things. Follow me on Twitter at the PE Challenge, or if you're looking for distance learning resources or advocacy pieces, you can find that at www.thepechallenge.com. Thank you for having me here.
Thanks for being here. All right, before we get started, Dr. Ramsey, did you want to just mention one more thing before we took it away?
Yeah, I just admitted I totally apologize for this. I forgot to mention that I'm also a national open trainer. So I just want to make that plug right there because I didn't want to make believe I didn't wear my shirt, and Brian is looking dead at me. All right, but I'm proud to be a national open trainer as well. It was amazing. So thank you.
All right, we're going to jump right into our panel. So the first question we have is, with an increased focus on health and safety, what are prior successes or pitfalls from the spring we need to be mindful of to begin the school year with blended learning? Dr. Ramsey, I'm going to ask you to take this one first, and then when he's done, if anybody else on the panel would like to jump in, please feel free.
Sure. So thank you for that question. I will argue that staying focused in the now, again, giving it a positive spin on where we are, and that we have had this sudden shift in what our work was going to be. And I think that health and phys ed teachers were very resilient in that we adjust quickly to situations even within our school system, in our individual schools or respective schools. So when this occurred, I would say that it took us all obviously by surprise, but I will, again, bring us back to staying focused and also remembering that social emotional learning piece that we all started to learn and be engaged with. And I would say that keep it in mind, I overheard Michelle Obama sharing the other day that she was going through in her podcast, going through this whole thing with depression. And I was saying to myself, how could someone, who's wealthy, have good things going on in their life, be suffering with depression or feeling some sense of depression? And then I thought about, it can happen to anyone. And to think that we now have to take care of ourselves, and I always bring it back to locus of control, and then share that out with our constituents, i.e. our the students we work with. I think that now more than ever, we have to stay, again, keeping the eyes on the prize and accentuating the positive at every instant that we have. And I think that using all and every resource that we have. And I would say that some of the pitfalls clearly were the whole thing about getting the technology for students who were unfortunately not able to get them, and all these nuances that come with the planning. I know many principals were just like dying for support and resources, and our teachers were very resilient. And I have to say that keeping that in mind moving forward, we should again stay in the now and understand that the best is yet to come if we all come together and refocus on that. So I could go on, but I just want to just share the mic.
Thank you, Dr. Ramsey. Does any other panelists want to jump in on that question?
I think one of the biggest things for us in our district, and maybe what I saw across the country, was just checking in with the people that you work with a lot. I think that was kind of a big success for us, is we had to kind of take a step back and do some self-care. Sometimes teachers and in the teacher education profession, we're really not good caretakers of ourselves because we're always wanting to take care of other people. And so I think it was really super important that we need to self-monitor, self-check, and where we're at and how we're feeling, because if we don't have our stuff together, we're not going to be able to, do what we need to as we, navigated the remote learning. So doing some really good self-checks, and even just picking up the phone and doing, I hated Zooms, but we had to, just to say, hey, how you doing? Are things going well? And I think that was super important. And it was also super important to do those monitoring of our students too, because that was super important during that time. And as we continue forward, that's something that in our district, we're really going to stress, is to do those check-ins with our students to make sure that what's going on at home, if their needs are being taken care of too.
Very, very true, Stephanie. Thank you. All right, our second question is, this pandemic has not impacted all students equally. Students of color, ELS students with disabilities are some of the populations that have been hit the hardest. As PE is important for all students, what are actionable steps we can take to ensure equity in our planning and implementation of blended learning? I'm going to direct this one to Paul Forbes first, and if anybody else wants to jump in after, feel free.
Yeah, so thanks for that, Christine. This has been a tough time, I think, for everyone, right? Whether you've been affected directly or indirectly, we've all been affected. And many of us know people, again, personally, who have been lost to this pandemic, or we have friends, family members who are affected. And in addition to the pandemic, we saw here in the United States, Minneapolis, right around Memorial Day, George Floyd. We watched another Black man as his life just was taken from him, as someone callously was able to put his knee on his neck. And we saw recurrences of other incidents across the country. And what this has done is thus magnified and exasperated what we've known. But for many people, folks act like they didn't know, or they hadn't heard of and hadn't seen. And now, whether it's because of the pandemic that folks are home and have to watch and see and hear, and they can hear the uprising and the protests that have occurred in the streets, not just here, but around the country and around the world. There's been an awakening for many. Some who, again, were woke, but this idea of not equality, but equity, where people who were shocked by saw and heard that, just from what Christine, what you said in the question, were shocked to hear that disproportionately some folks are being affected. I didn't need research, another poll to come out to find out who was going to be affected disproportionately by this pandemic. You could have given me the money and I could have told you who would be affected in that way. But there were people I needed to see and hear it, who got devices and who didn't, who had the infrastructures that even when they had the device, they didn't have the system and structures to tap in for remote learning. And then who would have to be on the front lines, who's driving the buses, who's moving the trains, who's working in the supermarkets. And what we know is, who's in temporary housing, who doesn't have housing security. And so it's important that while there's some people talking about let's hurry up and let's get back to normal, I say to folks, we shouldn't want to go back to normal. We should create a new normal, right? We should be thinking about how we disrupt and dismantle the structures and systems that were there to make a better tomorrow. And so I know this space we're talking about phys ed specifically, but I say to all folks, it's a mindset and a paradigm. It's the way we see the world. And that's important for any field or any discipline as we look. Like, I think about the norms that we have in this space here today. And we talk about best intentions, that we recognize and honor folks. But it's also interesting because even with best intentions, we make mistakes, right? So even in the greetings today, like I said, greetings to all. I know Christine, wonderful, loving human being. She'll pay me later for that. Wonderful, loving human being. And she said, good evening. But we know that there are some people in this space from India. Someone said they're from India. It's not evening for someone in India right now or from wherever they're from. And so when we hear that, like you might hear that and have an ouch moment like, well, it's not really evening. If you said greetings or welcome to everyone, that's inclusive, right? That brings in everybody. We might be on another East Coast or the West Coast or and different places. And again, it's nothing malicious, but we have to be cognizant, right? We have to be aware of what have our young people dealt with for the last 5 months, 6 months? What are they dealing with? How are we tapping into while we have this to do and that to do? How are we creating that space of belonging and saying, yes, this might be the space that we usually do this and this activity, but are we doing the coming together in the mental aspect and emotional aspect? And as Dr. Ramsey said, the social emotional, where people talk about that and say, oh, the social worker does that, we don't do this. No, this is part and parcel of what we do. How do we create a sense of belonging and community that even though we're physically apart, we can still be social? So don't say socially distanced. We say we're physically distanced and still social, and how we come together. And so I just think the words that we use is going to be important, that we don't separate and say, well, no, this is not important because it's phys ed, or this is not important because it's art. We need all of this at this moment in time for people to tap into the physical, spiritual, emotional, mental, social, emotional, everything coming together, and be aware that we're all be dealing with stuff in different places. But if we come with a mindset and an ethos that says we are in this together, and that we're about tapping in and ensuring that those who are most vulnerable, those who need it the most, we will give them the resources. I think that's going to help to create that better tomorrow in the way in which you move forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Any other panelists want to take that question before we move on?
Yeah. Yes. Am I on?
You're on.
Yeah. So I wanted to add, because the question was also, how can we ensure equity? I think we have to be honest with ourselves and honest about what we're doing for our students and what we're doing with them, and for those that are in their lives as well. I think that not making assumptions and planning with considerations that when you say all your students, you have to be extremely cautious and mindful that you address the needs of all your students. I know that there's been struggles with the lower grades, i.e. the babies below the 4th grade and so on. There's been struggle with students whose English is not their first language. How I know that firsthand, because my wife is an English as a new language educator, and I witnessed the struggle at some of those families. And thank goodness in my household, I was able to translate to Spanish for these students. And then at the same token, I asked, so I wonder how the physical education teacher are handling this student. And I did delve into that and supported this teacher, gave him additional resources as well, because I understood the need for this particular student, L student. But again, holistically speaking, we all have to go in there planning with these considerations. Also keep in mind the cultural norms of our students in this time. At one point we say, okay, this is all about phys ed, but if we don't address the needs of our students, and there is a serious issue with poverty, and that has impacted many students of color and brown and indigenous folks. So please keep in mind that don't go in with assumptions about students, but rather do your research beforehand and see and reach out to people in this circle, in this space, for support when it comes to lending that hand for students in our disciplines, respective disciplines.
Thank you, Dr. Ramsey. Anybody else on the panel before we move on? Okay.
Well, I live in the healthiest county in the state of Kansas, and I teach in the unhealthiest county in the state of Kansas. I live in the richest county in the state of Kansas, and I teach in one of the poorer counties in the state of Kansas. I can walk 50 feet and go across the county line into the county that I teach in. And there were huge disparities of inequity. I always knew them, I always talked about them, but other people need to start talking about them and having some very candid, open, rip off the Band-Aid conversations. And we need to be advocating for those people. I need to be advocating. I need to be doing a better job. And I feel like that's all encompassing of all education, whether it be PE, just like everybody said. It can't be just a PE issue. It's got to be way more, because it goes into physical literacy, it goes into obesity, it goes into ELL, it goes into our special ed kids, it's all encompassing. And it was a very challenging year for our district to see other districts doing so much more with so much more. And we had little. I could go on, but I'm not going to.
Thank you, Stephanie. All right, let's move on to our next question, and any panelists can jump on and answer this. Please feel free. First question coming in. If we are allowed to teach PE in our gym, how do you suggest we set up our space to be socially distant? Mike, you want to take that one?
I guess I can. I guess we can. That's a tricky question, because it's almost like if you're gonna do it, I feel like we're gonna do it. I honestly don't know, guys. I don't know. I wish things were normal. That's something I actually thought about all day today. As I found out today, I actually found out today that we're gonna be teaching online. So, and it crossed my mind, like, what if we came back in person? Like, how will this look? How am I gonna keep these kids apart? Because I worked the summer camp this summer, and we were allowed to be in the gym, and it's hard to stop kids from touching each other. It's hard to keep them apart. That's just the way children are. They're very sociable beings. So, how can you tell them? You can tell them all day, stay away from each other. Don't touch each other. Stay 6 feet. But, in reality, kids are going to be kids. So,
I appreciate the honesty. Brian, I saw your hand up before. I didn't know if you wanted to jump in there.
Sure. So, I think that as physical education teachers, we're going to have to, we traditionally at the elementary level, we go in, we teach about personal space, general space. Well, now, it's no longer a game with, walking around the gym with hula hoops or anything like that. Now it's a game of actually having lines on the floor, whether they be tape or whatever it is, and having students kind of sectioned off. And as much as I hate that, and it's not part of what we do, it's almost like it's going to have to become part of our classroom routines of how we actually operate our classes. Where is the section going to be for a person to keep their water bottle? A lot of water fountains are shut off. Kids are going to have to bring their own water with them in bottles to school. So, one of the most unique designs that I've seen so far from a teacher was actually a teacher in Hawaii sent me a picture of their gym. And it's an elementary school, and they've actually sectioned off 6x6 boxes and then had at least 6 to 12 feet in between those boxes, but set them up in a grid format of 4 boxes of the same color. And then with different color pieces of tape, did arrows on the floor diagonally across and then in one direction and the other direction in different color of tape. So if they were going to work with a partner, they'd say, okay, work with your partner with the green arrow right now. And they would, be able to interchange with that person. And then they'd be able to switch to the red arrow to a different partner that's still in their green boxes. So I think, utilizing some of those different unique ways to mark your floor and to keep kids separate is going to be critical. But teachers are going to have to think a little bit more outside the box from what they've traditionally done, and make sure that they're utilizing some of the things. And another piece of this is advocating to your building level principals, as well as any district administrators that you possibly can, because your class sizes cannot look the same. I know here in Georgia, it was not uncommon for us to have 70 students with 2 teachers in a gym, and that can't happen anymore, not if we're going to keep physically and socially distant. So those are conversations that you need to bring up early with your administrators, as far as what the expectations are and what your course load of face-to-face students is going to look like.
Great answer. Thank you, Brian. Very informative. I see Jason, and then Victor wants to jump in, so feel free. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, and I just kind of want to bring up a couple things that everybody else had said. First I want to thank Mike for taking the lead on that one, because I could see we were all kind of waiting to who was going to go first, and I was hoping I'd get some inspiration from Mike, but I did get more inspiration from him, from his answer, because he was honest. I love the fact that he was honest with that, because I think that's how a lot of us feel right now, and that we really don't know. I mean, we can come up with all these ideas. We can see all these ideas that other people are doing, but there's no one size fits all thing for this. It's what do you have? How can you be creative in doing this? I like how Kim, I believe it was on the chat feature, said that we're all first year teachers this year. I mean, we really are. And it's going to be a learning curve for everybody. But I think that's really my answer too, was either going to be just like Mike's, in that I don't know yet. I'll get back to you when I figure it out, or just listen to everybody else, see what everybody else is doing. We have so many things that are at our fingertips with social media and Twitter and Facebook and everything else that, and people are sharing constantly, that you can get out there, you can get some ideas, and I think being honest with your students too, as well, in that we're going to try this. If this doesn't work, we're going to try something else. We just have to try, and it's going to be trial and error.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is a great point to why we're all here. Like, we don't know. We tried to have this roundtable so that we can get ideas, and it's okay not to know, but we're bringing together people to hopefully brainstorm and network, use social media, and share those ideas. Dr. Ramsey, I know you wanted to speak to that point as well.
Yes. Everything is going to look different for everyone, because I'm speaking specifically about New York City. Unfortunately, we have, and I'm sure many people around this group here can attest, that we have limited spaces. And just imagine one issue over another, i.e., you have to be physically distanced. And I want to just reiterate to Paul's point when he said earlier about the term socially distanced. I don't know who coined that term, but I have to be honest with you folks. I do not like the term socially distanced, because right now we are socializing. It's by way of Zoom. If you call someone, you're socializing. If you meet with someone at a certain distance, you're socializing. We're physically distant. We're not socially distant. So let's try not to, make that term something that's going to be embedded in our students' minds as well. Because Mike's point about him struggling, and Jason's point about struggling with trying to put our heads together to see how we can get our kids to maintain that social love or caring for each other, but yet understanding the rules about the cleanliness and the keeping away from touching things and so on and so forth. So I know that I had a debate with some friends, and the debate was around the difference between physical education, i.e. structured, versus physical activity. So while we brainstorming, we also have to start thinking about physical activity as it applies to students who may not have access, or in some of our cases do not have access. We won't have access to our gymnasiums. How we're going to instill physical activity in our students, i.e., using the physical literacy lens to understand holistically the benefits of movement. I think that Open, and I'm gonna just do a plug here, has done an amazing job from day one in addressing this issue. And I think that around here, we can put our brains together. I will also argue that we could put, add, besides the chat, Christine and Jim, putting some sort of a resource or catalog inbox where people around here and others can have access to this, and maybe put them in order, i.e., for those of you who are going to be teaching remotely, for people who will be teaching face-to-face and so on. I know that New York State AFER put together that document, reentry document. Take a look at that. If you haven't seen that, I'll make sure that that is sent to you, Christine and Jim, for you to share this with this group. But again, folks, think about that, and we all should do this, right? Physical education versus physical activity. How's that going to look? Because you cannot teach structured physical education in a way that you will normally do remotely. People, we know this for a fact. As much as we try, do everything we can, we want to be in front of our students. We know this. So let's start thinking physical activity and how we can plug in that notion of movement and keeping students active and teaching that part of the benefits of movement and the benefits of physical activity and how they can do that in their setting with our guidance. And I will strongly encourage us to do that instead of don't get bogged down into thinking like it can't happen. And I know that feeling, Mike. I felt your pain. I know that feeling. I know that feeling, Jason, that we don't have the answer, and our districts all over the country are uncertain about where, when, where, and how. So let's be positive about this and do our best to support one another. Hey, here's an idea, and we go to that resource catalog, as I would suggest that we should probably do. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Ramsey.
Sure.
Our next question is, let's see here. What are some virtual engagement strategies that worked well for you in the spring? Dan, do you want to take that question? There you go.
So I think in this situation that we're in, the most important thing is we have to meet the students where they are. So when you're working with a student remotely, and I'm sure we notice this and recognize this, we have to invite them to be physically active. We have to invite them into things because they're not in our environment. We don't know the environment that they're in. You don't want to force a student to turn their camera on. We don't know what their setting is. And so we have to trust them. They are trusting us to come into their home. And so we have to respect that as well. So we invite them to physical activity. We invite them into these things. And a big piece to me, and I know, is we have to change this image of physical education teacher, this negative image. And what we see in the movies and TV, I saw something last week. I'm like, really, again? Always picking on us. This is an opportunity to do that. Hey, my physical education teacher, even though we're remote, he's checking in on me. She's checking in on me. They're checking in on me. They're checking in on me over email. They're staying after the Zoom call, say, hey, how are you doing? Or when the first one's on, how's everything going? How are you doing? Just check in with kids. They're doing a great job at home. They're doing a great job on the Zoom calls. They're turning their stuff in. Then send them a positive email. Send a positive email to them, send a positive email to their parents and say, hey, Tabby's doing a great job. I love that she did this, do that, and keep it up. We do what we do in our classroom. We just have to make it remote. It's harder, but we do it. We roll with punches. That's what we do. We're physical educators, so.
And we also got to be compassionate and understanding, because not every student will, you say invite them in. Not every student may want to turn on their camera. A lot of students may not want you to see their house. So, we got to be flexible as well as understanding of different backgrounds, and just, try to meet our students where they are.
Thank you. As we're looking in the chat, also people are sharing some resources that worked for them virtually. But before we move on to the next question, any other panelists want to share things that worked well for them virtually?
Another thing that worked for me is getting straight to the point. So a lot of my videos that I sent out were, I don't know about y'all, but a lot of times if I see a video that's 30 to 45 minutes, I'm either gonna skip through it, you know, try to get to the important part or look for something that's intriguing. So I try to make my videos and my resources straight to the point. Because like I say, you know, a child is going, if a child is watching a video, if it hasn't caught their attention within like the first minute and a half, they're probably more than likely going to change to something else.
Thank you. All right, next question we have. Any resources for implementing equity education in the new online environment?
I've kind of been instructed to do some more cultural relevance work in our district. And so I've been really relying upon the teachingtolerance.org is one of the websites that I've really been looking at. It has great resources on equity, social justice, and we're big into empowering our students, making good choices and healthy choices, and being physically literate adults in KCK. And the Teaching Tolerance website talks about being agents of change in their own lives. And I think a lot of our kids had to grow up very fast this spring, because we had kids that were, their parents were essential workers. And so they took care of their siblings at home. And some of them got jobs during the school year to, get extra money. And so the equity issue was a big deal. But we're trying to empower students as much as we can. And that's been kind of a great learning tool for us so far for me to look at.
Thank you, Stephanie.
I was gonna say Teaching Tolerance is actually a really good resource. I'm also gonna mention, I just put in the chat, empatico.org. That's about empathy. I think that I do a lot. I'm leading the work citywide right now on implicit bias and understanding how subconscious things that we say and do or don't say and do, how it affects practices, policies, behaviors, and people, and how we could, while we can eliminate our biases, we can mitigate the effects that they have on us. And one of the strategies that we talk about is perspective taking. And basically, that's just empathy. And people think that you could teach the ABCs and 1, 2, 3. Empathy can be taught as well, right? So we can do things and speak about, the feeling of winning and losing. Put yourself in someone else's shoes, look through someone else's eyes. And I think that, again, as a society, I don't care what your political affiliations are, we have seen that we are in a world right now where people, especially in this country, you go to your corners. Literally, you're saying, you believe this, then I'm over here, and that's it, and we go our separate ways. And I'm saying part of what we have to do, if we're talking about teaching a whole child, in the things that we do and the way in which we interact is going to show them and model, again, what this is about, to be empathetic. You might be on this call right now and be saying, I'm not about the mask movement, right? Why are we wearing masks? And people have said the mask is not about you, it's actually about others. And if we can't even get to that space, we're having conversations about, even if you don't feel like, well, I'm not sure how your freedom of expression, whatever you might, again, we could get into a discussion about that. But if the mindset is about how we doing for others, if you can't understand that, then we have bigger problems, right? There's a deeper conversation we need to have. And I think that empatico.org is one where you can find lesson plans for students in elementary, middle, or high school. And again, without separating and saying, oh, but this is not a phys ed thing. that's the whole point. This isn't a phys ed thing. This is a everybody, all human thing. We got to figure out how we do this together and start getting to a place where we do start thinking about, I am my brother's keeper, I am my sister's keeper, and what I do affects you, and I am and won't be unless you are, right? So I think that ethos, again, is something you think about. But teacher tolerance, again, is a go-to for me, and pataco.org is one that helps you with the empathy that leads to, again, the equity and understanding.
Thank you, Paul. Those are some amazing resources that you're sharing. For the essence of time, we're going to ask one last question. Then after this, we're going to have some resource share out for you guys. And then we're going to have breakout rooms where we can continue to talk about some of the questions that we didn't get to, as well as share best practices and things that may have worked well for us or things that we were struggling with in other breakout rooms. So the last question is, for self-contained APE students with disabilities where social distancing is not possible, what are some strategies to use in addition to visual and verbal cues when physical tactile prompting is so crucial to their success?
Great question.
That's open to anybody on the panel.
Yeah, that's a great.
I think we were all just waiting for Mike to say, I don't know. So we all
Well, and I think that's really, we always differentiate learning as PE teachers just because we've always had to do that. And so I feel like this is an area where I'm really, really, really relying upon my special ed, my adaptive PE teachers so much, because they're creating like a whole new template of what that's going to look like. So we're working on some grade level outcomes in a remote learning, and they're going to take them and be very personalized, according to the IEP and things like that, of breaking down those grade level outcomes of what they can do in a remote learning environment. And so, right now, I think they are so crucial, like our hearing impaired kids and things like that. We are really relying upon our SPED team a lot to do that work. That wasn't really answering it, but yeah, that's a great question. It takes a village. It's going to be all encompassing of everyone.
Anybody else want to jump in? Go ahead, Dr. Ramsey.
Christine, I agree with everyone. It's an amazing question that people around in this group is probably saying, wait a minute, wow. Because it's it's a subject that is very challenging for a regular phys ed teacher. Imagine an AP teacher who has to now think beyond that box and all the other geometrical shapes that you could think of to make things unique and different for these students. One thing that came to mind as I was listening, and I know Jason was like waiting for Mike or someone else to speak up, but because I really wanted to hear something else, but from someone else. One thing that came to mind was connecting with the parents of those students. That's the one thing that I can think of right off the cuff, by saying, hey, I am an AP teacher. I can teach you modification. I can give this resource. Whatever it is that you can give, we can give to parents right off the cuff is something that I would think immediately, it could be an immediate resource. Other than the putting things together with your SPED and or AP teachers or faculty, I believe that parents are crucial in this movement, because we have to give them that additional support. Because imagine how they're thinking that, wow, not only my child cannot go there physically, but now I'm in a second batch of issues that I have to deal with. So I think that emotionally speaking to parents and getting something or some type of resource for supporting parents and understanding that, hey, you do have a cadre of people here who are willing to help you and do this together. Let's work together as a team. And I couldn't think of something else other than parents, how the parents of these students will feel, or family members as well. So I'm not saying just parents, but their families, their siblings as well, and so on. So That's the one thing that came to mind. Other than that, I am hungry for any resource that you can come around this question, Christina, and I appreciate that question you asked.
That was from one of our attendees tonight. I cannot take the credit for that question. Does anybody else want to jump in before we end our panel discussion? Okay, I just want to say thank you very much to our panelists for coming tonight. Really shed some light on some tough questions. And we appreciate you being here and bringing your knowledge to the table. So thank you guys very much. Before anybody goes, we're going to have a resource share out now. Panelists who need to leave, please feel free. But right now, we're going to have Brian from Open Phys Ed. He's going to share some open resources that we can use as phys ed teachers for this coming school year.
Thank you very much, Christine, and thanks to you and Jim for hosting the event this evening. Appreciate the opportunity to join for a little while and take a few minutes to share some of the resources that we have available with Open that will assist teachers, whether they are in the face-to-face format with the physical distancing or in a virtual format or even in a blended format. So, you know, I'm going to highlight some of these real quick, and I will do a screen share here in just a moment. But just to give you a little background, I spent 25 years in elementary and middle school physical education, then transitioned into a position that I never dreamed would be so valuable later on in life. I oversaw online health and physical education courses for 3 years with the Cobb County School District here in Georgia. So I learned a tremendous amount about online education. And as some people mentioned in the chat, you know, everybody's a first-year teacher this year. I was lucky enough to work with about 25 teachers who already have experience in the online environment. And that's part of what I can contribute to Open right now, is that I bring that online experience to Open so that we can make sure that, hey, if it says to print out a copy of something, hey, we can't assume everybody has a printer at home. So we have to come up with some alternatives for how these students can get these materials or what they can do in order to have access to things. So I am going to briefly go through in just a moment. As soon as I get access with screen sharing, I'll go ahead and give you a quick walkthrough as far as some of the different resources that we have available on Open in case you're not aware of those. So with Open, you know that we do ask that people go ahead and have a registration, and that's just to keep hackers and spammers out of the website. If you are not at openphysed.org yet a registered member, you just look for the blue bar across the top with the yellow writing, register for free here. Everything is 100% completely free. There's no bait and switch in here. So when you get in, you don't click on a resource and it says, oh, well, you can access that, but it's premium content and it's $9.99 a month. Everything is absolutely free. So most of the things that you are going to want to look at as far as delivering content for physical education is across the top here. We'll start off with the Active Home section right here. So within Active Home, that was what we created back last spring when the pandemic initially started and everybody transitioned to virtual education for physical education. We have a ton of resources on here. I'll highlight a couple of them. First, our Believe in You series with Varsity Brands is primarily a high school resource. It is a series of videos by Kevin Atlas, who's the first and only, to my knowledge, Division I winning college basketball scholarship athlete. But he talks about some of his challenges that he had to overcome, but he also interviews other people in society that had to overcome challenges. And then there's journals that students can complete. Again, this is a high school targeted lesson for social and emotional learning. Our partners at Hip Hop Public Health and recording artist Dougie Fresh had his video that he recorded back last spring, 20 seconds or more. I saw today where they released a new one about wearing a mask in public. So you can take a look at that on the Hip Hop Public Health website. We also sent it out through our social media. But the 20 seconds or more, there's some elementary activities there, as well as some secondary activities that tie into that. We did have activities designed for physical and social distancing. So if you are going back face-to-face and you need some activities to kind of get you started, these were some of the things that we created back last spring. So you can check those out. Physical education at home. We have tried to do, as some of the panelists mentioned earlier, trying to do some of the English and Spanish and trying to be more inclusive with things. We don't have a full-time translator, but we do try to get as many documents as we can in both English and Spanish if at all possible. So this talks a little bit about some things that parents need to be aware of with physical activity and physical education at home, as well as some physical activity logs. One thing that I do want to mention to you that because it was part of our last question with our adapted physical education students is we do have a document that was created with universal design learning suggestions and options. So this document that is in here is meant not only for teachers, but also for parents who are working with their students at home. They're broken into 4 categories: equipment, rules, environment, and instructional strategies. And you see that there are plenty of suggestions here in order to make modifications for students who are adapted physical education students and for them to be successful in learning the different parts of our curriculum. We then created 13 weeks of content. So you see it broken down: K2, 3, 5, middle school, as well as high school. So the content for the most part was sectioned off that way. Occasionally there was some overlap, K2 to 3, 5, as well as middle school to high school. But the format of those are laid out in a grid format. And again, this was last spring. We didn't know what schools were going to look like. So we wanted to make sure we covered every day of the week. So we had 5 days of activities and learning for students to do at home. We also realized, and this is another thing we need to think about when we talk about virtual education, a lot of times parents and siblings are going to be the people who are going to be working with these students at home. So instead of talking about on the left-hand side learning objectives, we changed it to learning goals because that's a more common term more people will understand. Instead of academic language, we called it today's vocabulary. Also, we made this available in digital format, so students could click links, parents could click links, but we also tried to include as many documents as we could because we knew many schools were copying these different modules off and different activity plans off and sending them home, whether it be through car rider lines that were coming through, driving through to pick up materials, sending it out on school buses so that people could get access to the school materials at home. And then also we have some separate resources from our Open National trainers down here at the bottom of that page. So it's a great place, the Active Home section is, for you to check out to see what all is available for students to utilize in that virtual format. We also transitioned in May to our curriculum mapping project to make sure that we had resources available for teachers for in-school instruction with the physical distancing, continued distance learning, or a blended approach. So we prioritized the learning outcomes for physical education and narrowed the scope a little bit because, in a realistic format, we're going to lose some physical education time this year. So we want to make sure that we prioritize the most important ones. We created a 10-week block plan, and I'll open that up and expand it a little bit so you can see what that looks like. So going across with week 1, we're going across with the elementary to middle to high school, what those modules are going to be, the priority outcomes that are addressed. And then within each of the lessons that we have created, we always had a social and emotional learning focus, and that was based on the CASEL core competencies. So you see the first week, we're going to talk about self-awareness. Well, if you think about it from a standpoint of whether you're elementary, middle, or high school, you're talking about personal space, general space, you're talking about rules and self-management and how to control yourself. So these are things that we integrated not only through physical education, but also through the social and emotional learning concepts there. We also created outcomes maps. So for these outcomes maps, we laid the outcomes out by weeks for teachers so that they could follow them, and by grade level, as well as the social and emotional alignment focus. So it was a true backward design, starting with the standards, prioritizing them and the learning outcomes, getting all the way down to the curriculum maps. And then from there, we got to our resources with PE Now. So that stands for New Open Weekly. We have our first 3 weeks of lessons, that are out. They're broken down into elementary, middle, and high school. And we also have a video that's right here. Myself and Executive Director Aaron Hart going through the website because these look a little bit different than our traditional modules. If you are familiar with our regular face-to-face modules, we had things set up in a certain way. I'm going to open up the elementary so you can see what they look like. This is the Go Be Great section. We have our K2 on the left, 3-5 on the right. So it starts with a learning target overview. So basically, what are our learning targets going to be for this particular week? Another thing that we created was a student family checklist. So we wanted to make sure, especially in the virtual environment, that students and families knew exactly what needed to be completed each and every week. So we'll have this for all the weeks of our instruction. And then continuing on, with the section, we have our weekly targets. So these weekly targets are basically, okay, what are we going to do? What are the objectives and the learning outcomes? Now, traditionally, these were in our activity plans, but we know the documents that we send home with our students, whether it be online or through paper, they don't need to know as much about the objectives as we do to go ahead and put those in for our administrators and to make sure that we stay on task and cover everything that we need to. So we have physical education objectives, social and emotional learning, as well as the wellness component and the physical activity that some of the panelists mentioned earlier, and then all the different outcomes listed there as well. So we chose to do a menu board format for the different lessons. It starts with a brain and body warm-up, purposeful practice, which is kind of the meat and potatoes of the lesson, and then a just for fun, kind of a closure, and social and emotional learning, mental health type of activity there. You see that we do have videos that support through YouTube. So we went ahead and hot linked those in there. Another thing that we did that we tried to make it so that the resources were more usable for students is that instead of putting things in landscape format where they had to unlock and change or flip their phones or tablets around if they were using those devices, we changed everything to portrait mode. So everything lays out very nicely on a phone or on a tablet. So this is the format. We've got the first 3 weeks out. We will have the next 3 weeks will be coming out on Monday, actually next 4 weeks. So 4 to 7, and then we will go ahead and get the next 3 weeks out. So we'll have the first 10 weeks out by the end of the month, and then we'll continue laying out sections for teachers to access. So the complete school year will be laid out by mid to late November. So all those resources, as I mentioned, are all free. And if I can help in any way, I'll throw my email address in the chat box there, and feel free to reach out with any questions that you may have. So thank you very much, Jim and Christine, for allowing me to share a little bit about that, and appreciate your attention tonight.
Thank you, Brian. I know that me and my school, we constantly use Open. We did your field day. It was amazing. So it's a lot of great resources. And the fact that it's constantly being updated is amazing. So as you said before, if you're not using Open, definitely recommend it as one of the resources that you can use. It could be for online instruction. It could be for in-person instruction. And they touch on a lot of different areas of PE. So great resources. Thank you. All right, Jim, I'm going to turn it over to you for our next resource share out.
All right. And thank you, Brian, and everyone. Yeah, I also love all the open resources. They're great. They're free. Anytime I need something, and it's just really so diverse. So anytime I need something, whether it's in the classroom, whether it's for any, I go, I click it. I love to do small groups and stations. Well, in the old normal, but the new normal is, that's what I love to do. So I actually wanted to segue into that. One of the resources from Open I loved was the Shadow Sports series. So I'm going to introduce Francesca Autori of a company called Bunsey, who was one of my favorite resources. That when I was able to take all the videos that I made from the, I had to brain a moment, to make from the Shadow Sports, and was able to show them off. So I'm going to introduce Francesca Autori of Bunsey. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Jim. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Well, first off, the panelists, you guys were awesome. My head was kind of spinning from hearing you all talk. And thank you, Jim, and from Christine for coordinating this and having me on tonight. So I'm going to be brief since it is late now, but I wanted to share a little bit about Buncee, how Jim's used Buncee, and how hopefully you all can take away some ideas to implement Buncee for your coming year, whether it be remote or in person. We are based in New York City, so it's really great to, in particular, to connect with New York City educators here, although it's awesome to see educators from all over the world joining us today. But as I was hearing you all talk, a lot of things were coming to mind about how everyone could use Buncee, but I want to just focus on a couple of takeaways for everyone here today. One, first off, Buncee is a multimedia creation tool for everyone in the schoolhouse, for PE educators, students, administrators to create engaging content. For everybody here, as Jim mentioned, he used Buncee to share videos and resources with students while we were in remote learning. So I'll share a couple of educator created examples as well as student created examples. So one of our biggest goals here at Buncee is to empower all students as creators to demonstrate their learning. For those of you who are based in New York City, you'll be familiar with District 75, which for those of you who are not familiar, it's a special needs district. And I'll say one of my proudest moments here working with Buncee has been working with a District 75 high school, so a completely special needs high school, in which the reason they implemented our platform was to one is a way for the educators to, of course, connect with the community, but also as a way for students to communicate their understanding. So some of their students may not be able to hold a pencil, but they're able to use our creation tools to drag in a sticker or to record their audio to show what they know. And I'll be showing one Buncee from that high school in particular. So let me go ahead and share my screen to give you a better understanding of what Buncee is. One second here. Okay, so you should be able to see my screen now. So again, since many of you may not be familiar with Buncee, it's a multimedia creation tool. What you're looking at right now is a Buncee. So one, it's a way for you to create resources like Jim had to share with students, and two, it's a way for students to demonstrate their learning. You can see in this quote here, this is from a student, a first grade student in Brooklyn. He and his mom during remote learning used our creation tools to create together, and she shares here that having all the media tools on our platform made it very easy for her child to get creative while at home. And then here on the left is a video about our integration with a reading accessibility tool, Immersive Reader, which some of you may be familiar with, but it's a really powerful accessibility tool for language learners, students with dyslexia or visual impairments. So this is a video, I won't play it now, but of how Buncee and Immersive Reader work together to support students at a school in New York City, also the Young Women's Leadership School of Astoria. So both of these here are highlighting our goal of empowering students as creators, in addition to being a resource for you all to create content remotely. So I'll share a couple of educator created examples now and a couple of student examples now, so you guys can get a better idea. I'll then follow up with some SEL resources, since we do have SEL resources for you all to use Buncee with as well. So let me share some of Jim's fabulous Buncees. Give me 1 second here. Sorry, lots of tabs. Okay, so here, and this was inspired by Jim's. I have a couple of examples inspired by Jim, but this here is a Buncee, again, created on our creation canvas. That's a physical activity log. So students, you could send something like this to your students, whether you're hybrid or remote, and they could use our creation tools to keep track of their physical activity. So you'll see here, all these graphics and animations are found within our library. So we have 35,000 or some number around there, different animations and graphics, different sports. Here we have some weightlifters that you can drag in. So it's really a one-stop shop of all different graphics and media tools. So students, you could share this with students, they could copy it and keep a log of their activity. You'll see some GIFs of Jim here. So Jim moving and grooving, but students could, instead of Jim, or Jim could do it too, but keep logs. You can always go back and edit your Bunsies at any time. And then within the Canvas as well, you can record a video of yourself. So we have a video recording featuring Jim here.
So I log in my exercises. I log in how many minutes I did them for. I did it for at least 30 minutes.
So Jim's sharing how he was active, you know, of course, so that could be a student instead. And we do, in addition to this Bunsie here, we have a whole library of templates that you all can pull from. So we actually have a physical activity log template that you could take, modify for your needs, and send to students. I'd also like to show Immersive Reader here for those of you who are not familiar with Immersive Reader and how that works within our platform, essentially. So for those of you not familiar with Immersive Reader, again, it's a reading accessibility tool. So let's say your student's viewing this physical activity log that you shared with them, and maybe they're not a native English speaker. They could select this Immersive Reader icon at the top. And there's a number of different functionality within Immersive Reader. One, it'll read aloud the text in the written language, but you also see in the top here, there are 3 different icons, one of which will allow the viewer of the Bunsie to translate to 67 different languages. So I recently did, again, for those of you in New York City, I did a PD for District 11 and District 31 ENL educators. In District 11, pretty close to Jim in the Bronx. They were particularly happy for having Bangla here. So I know Microsoft is adding new languages all the time. I'll go back to Spanish though for the sake of the demo. So you can translate to Spanish, it'll read it aloud in Spanish.
Elija una de las indicaciones para.
There's also a picture dictionary, so for certain words, a visual will reinforce that vocabulary word, so for not all of them, but for some of them. There's also a line focus for students with dyslexia, highlighting parts of speech. So not only does this make this more accessible for language learners, but I also particularly like Immersive Reader for helping families. So if a parent or a caretaker is working with a student on something and they're not a native English speaker, they could also translate using Immersive Reader. You don't have to log in to Bunsie to access that. So that is one educator created example. Here also, sorry, this Zoom blocking. There we go. This is also from Jim. So here, and also in New York City, but also beyond, we've had a lot of educators use the our creation canvas to create virtual classrooms. So Jim here kind of created a virtual gym. Jim created a virtual gym. So he uploaded Bitmojis of himself, and each one links to a video. So this is another example of how you could remotely connect with students through Bunsie. So now I'll show a couple of student created examples to spark ideas of how from the student side they can use Bunsie as well. Now these are both not directly related to PE, but they're powerful examples I wanted to share today. So here, this is actually from a New York City librarian. We work with the New York City school library systems, and this librarian here shared that in her 3rd grade dual language class, the students, some didn't speak English. That wasn't their first language. So, but whatever the case may be, they were able to learn Bunsie within minutes and take off creating with it. Unfortunately, I can't share this student created Bunsie with you since it does have a video of him, but it's basically an all about me Bunsie. So especially if we're starting the year, depending on where you are in a remote environment, you can have students create all about me Bunsies, getting to know their passions, their interests, whatever activities they like to do on our creation canvas. So students, a very popular use case for Bunsie is creating all about me's. And that's what this was here. If you can see it, it says, "Hi, I'm Parker Simmons. I love dinosaurs. I live on Staten Island. I was born in Memphis, Tennessee." So it's a great way to get to know students, especially if you're not in person. And then the last example I wanted to share ties more into SEL, and it also was a very touching story. So This was one of those special needs students I was mentioning at the special needs high school I work with here in New York. Unfortunately, this student did get COVID, was in the hospital, but as you can see, was better, and she is fully recovered. But she, after leaving the hospital, used our creation canvas and all the graphics to connect with the teacher. So continue, building that relationship or maintaining that relationship remotely. She created a card for the teacher saying, "I love you. I was sick before, but I'm back again." And we do have a lot of stories of students going home to create bunsies for fun, or to create cards like this. So I did want to share that, as well as it certainly is in line with wellness, SEL, of maintaining relationships remotely. And then the last thing I want to mention is we do have an entire Microsoft course dedicated to different SEL activities with Bunsy. So if anyone has a Microsoft login, they could take this course. I can share it in the chat box as well, and you can see different activities about using Bunsy with different SEL competencies. Now, in terms of getting started, anyone can go on bunsy.com and see the different options for creating an account there. As an educator, you can have an account, and then you can have student accounts beneath you. We do synchronize with Google Classroom as an option, or with Microsoft, so I'm happy to answer any questions related to that. But again, I hope Bunsy, or these ideas shared, will help you connect with your students if you are going remote. So feel free to reach out to me with any questions. And thank you all again for sharing, all the panelists, and for Jim and Christine for welcoming me on. I'll stop sharing my screen.
Thank you so much, Francesca. And yes, Bunsy is one of my favorite things. And honestly, for me, going back to the question about remote learning is very quickly, is that I was looking for things that would be able to, like a platform like Bunsy, that would be able to, literally, I could make it and I could send it out on my Google Classroom, and it will work for iPads, and works on MacBooks, it works on anything that students would have. They would all be able to access it. So one of my favorite things. Thank you, Francesca. So now, thank you everyone for staying.
We're going to end the evening. I just want to thank our panelists again. I want to thank Open Phys Ed for sharing out amazing resources, as well as Bunsy for sharing out their amazing resources. I want to thank my co-host Jim, who you may not have heard a lot of tonight, but he has been handling the tech piece and controlling our Zoom and the chat. So he's been very busy behind the scenes. And most of all, we want to thank everyone for coming tonight. This was started off as a planning idea. It turned into a roundtable. We hope you guys found it helpful. And again, I'm going to put my email and my Twitter handle in the chat, and you can feel free to reach out if you want to email or you have any follow-up questions. But thank you guys so much. I want to wish everybody good luck with their upcoming school year. Please stay safe and stay in touch.
Yes, thank you, Christine. This has just been wonderful. From, like I said, this started off between you and I just saying, let's plan. And we have 580 people, and people are still here. We have 64 people still with us right now. Thank you, the panelists. You've been great and wonderful. Thank you, Bunsy. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Christine. This was great to plan and to host with you. Yes, I didn't get a chance to say much, but I'm going to put my email and Twitter in the chat run right now. I'm also going to be putting another thing, is just because we would like your feedback, and like the 3-2-1 protocol, which also works as a great exit slip, where it's going to be 3 things that you found wonderful, 2 things you're so curious about, and 1 thing that you're going to possibly be able to implement, and as an option for possibly a follow-up. So I'm going to put that in the chat. That Google Form link right there. I'm also going to be emailing it to everybody. So if you just giving you a heads up, so that if you get the same email again tomorrow, soon, that's the same thing. But I just want to say thank you so much for sticking with us. Definitely, Stephanie, I would love to. And thank you, Christine, and just thank you everyone for being here. I think Paul Forbes said it best, Cecile Design, we got to create our own new normal, and I think this is ways how we do that. So thank you, everyone.
Good night, guys.